Welcome to News West 9's West Texas View with Johnny Lou Avery.
Welcome to the program this morning. This is the West Texas View, and I'm Johnny Lou Avery. And our guest today is Stephen Brown, and he's the president and CEO of the Commemorative Air Force. And I want you to know over the next few Sundays a lot about that place. It's one of those things that we constantly refer to as the best kept secret. We have a lot of visitors that come off of the interstate to visit the Commemorative Air Force. But there's a lot of people in Midland, Odessa, and the Permian Basin that have never been there. And this is a place that we have a lot of pride in. We have a lot of people supporting it. And if you have not been there or have not been lately, when you hear this series of programs, I hope it really inspires you and motivates you to go back and take all of your guests that come to see you. This is a wonderful thing that you will learn so much about. And even if you've been lately, it's such a changing display. So I've asked Stephen to be our first guest because I want him to go back and talk about the history of this place. It has a very storied history that takes us to other parts of Texas. So, Stephen, thank you so much for coming. And before we talk about the CAF, I want you to talk about yourself and tell a little bit about how you arrived here and your background.
Well, thank you, Johnny Lou. My father was a military man for 37 years, eventually reaching the rank of a 3-star general. But we started off, my life was here in Texas, of all things. I was born in Lubbock. And then we moved away when I was 3. My father was the professor of military science at Texas Tech. And also, incidentally, because I just went to the rodeo the other night, he was the Texas Tech rodeo coach at that time. And from there we traveled around, and I ended my way back to Texas to graduate high school from Killeen High School. So I'm a Killeen kangaroo. And then went off and went to Penn State University, where I got my degree, and also got a commission as a regular Army officer for the U.S. Army, and went to flight school and became a helicopter pilot. An officer, served in Germany, served for 5 years in the military. And then I got into really consumer marketing and consumer products, and eventually married up my hobby with my job, and became the chief marketing officer and the executive vice president of the Experimental Aircraft Association, which is in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Yeah. They have the largest flying in the world. And that really prepared me throughout all of my consumer jobs, but then the EAA prepared me to take over as the president here at the CAF 2 years ago. So now I'm back for my 3rd time in Texas, and I'm happy to be here.
So you just keep making this circle around.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
And I've been to Oshkosh, and I'm familiar with where you were before.
Yes,
so that
absolutely.
Is wonderful. Well, it's always nice to have someone that appreciates Texas, and I think you have to live here at least a year to appreciate Texas, don't you?
Well, yes, ma'am. And my family, I still have family in Gainesville, Texas, and my mother grew up here, so we've got and my friends of my father are still in the West Texas area that I've gotten to connect back up with.
Well, having that military background certainly it was good grounding for what then you chose as your career later in your life.
Yes, ma'am, it certainly did.
Well, I want us to get right into the history of the CAF, and I know that it didn't start here, but it got here as soon as it could.
Right, well, it actually started in Mercedes. It was founded by a gentleman named Lloyd Nolan, who was our founder, and about 5 of his friends. And they had been World War II aviators, and they were distressed to see that all the airplanes from World War II were being cut up and melted into beer cans. And they felt that they should be saved, and so they bought a P-51 called Red Nose. And it's a P-51 Mustang. It's the fighter of the World War II that's highly credited. And they started with that one airplane, and they gathered around, and they started collecting airplanes. And then one day somebody jokingly came out and had painted on the side of one of the airplanes Confederate Air Force, because they felt that the U.S. Air Force was destroying all the airplanes, so they were going to form the Confederate Air Force to kind of go against that. So it was a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, and it became very tongue-in-cheek. Everyone became a colonel, because nobody wanted to have any higher or lower rank than that. And so they really started together, and they became they really decided that the goal of the organization was to acquire one of every type of aircraft that flew in World War II and to keep it in flying condition. And that's a really big difference between the Commemorative Air Force and other museums you go to where they have static airplanes on display. Our airplanes are scattered around the country. Besides our huge presence here in West Texas, we have over 70 units scattered around the country in 27 states. And we operate 150 airplanes that are still flying today.
Am I correct that a lot of them are used in movies?
They are. They were used in the famous epic Tora, Tora, Tora about 25 years ago. They were used as recently as Pearl Harbor. And then we end up in commercials and different feature films where they need an airplane, and they contact us, and we have that capability.
Well, I remembered that there was at least one movie that your planes had been used in. And you have a lot of people that are drawn to this museum because they own a plane, and they'll loan it or put it on display and then take it off.
Well, usually our airplanes are donated to us, so we don't have too many airplanes on loan, although we have members that own their airplanes and then use them within our air show and so forth. But we own and operate all of our airplanes, and the ones that are on display, most of them are the ones that are flyable. We have a couple that are not flyable, but most of them are part of the active fleet which rotate in and out of here and are on display.
So you were back at Mercedes.
Yep, we went to Harlingen.
And then you went to Harlingen and tell that
Well,
chapter.
we were in Harlingen for a long time, and that's really where it got its feet and really grew and grew and grew and became known as the Ghost Squadron. We had gray uniforms and gray Stetsons we were known for. We had some famous members in their day, Ed McMahon and Tennessee Ernie Ford. And we flew all of our airplanes to Washington for a big air expo in the early 70s. So we were really quite well known in those days of the Confederate Air Force with our gray uniforms. And we were there until the late 80s, actually right around 1991 is when the move was made. But for different reasons within the city, it became apparent that we needed to move. And so we went out and looked at prospective sites, and different sites came to us and made offers, and through a leadership element here and a big group of people in Midland that wanted us here. Matter of fact, I was just talking to Mayor Wes Perry the other day, and he was part of that group when he was a young man, and a large group of people helped to bring us here and sponsored us and gave us the money and the facilities the start of the facilities that you see today.
And wonderful facilities.
Spectacular.
Because I'd been at Harlingen, and as I remember it, it was an old hangar.
Yes, ma'am.
And not any landscaping around the building. And then you come out here and you have this beautiful facilities and multiple buildings and all the nice landscaping and entry and everything in it.
Well, as everything grows, it starts out in one way and ends up a little bit more refined as we go along. But it was a great place. Harlingen was a great place. Many of our members still remember it. It was the good old days, and it formed all of the traditions. We're a very tradition-laden organization with being around for over 50 years, so those traditions are important to our members.
Well, but one of the things that I liked about that is there seemed to not be a lot of animosity with the move. And a lot of times you have a lot of animosity and a lot of division.
Right.
And it didn't seem like that from an outsider standpoint, that there wasn't that much animosity.
Well, change is hard often, but apparently, everybody likes being here as far as I know. People talk about the good old days. That always happens, but people really enjoy being here in the Midland, Odessa community and having the beautiful facilities that we have.
And you had wonderful support from the community. We're going to have to take a break now, but we'll be back in just a minute and continue this conversation. This is the first in a series of programs about the Commemorative Air Force, and we're concentrating today on the history of it and how it came to be and to blossom in the Midland, Odessa, Permian Basin area. We'll be back. Okay, good.
Stay tuned. West Texas View will be right back.
Now we need to